If you recently bought a new iPhone, especially at full price, you might want to take a deep breath before continuing. Because what Apple is quietly preparing behind the scenes could make that purchase feel unnecessary, overpriced, and perfectly timed for Apple. Not for you. This isn't about a flashy Pro model or some ultra-luxury device. This is about a phone that may cost just $600 and still deliver most of what people actually care about. It's called the iPhone 17e, and according to a growing number of leaks, this phone isn't meant to be exciting. It's meant to be dangerous. Dangerous to Android flagships. Dangerous to Apple's competitors. And most importantly, dangerous to Apple's own pricing strategy. Apple has always been very careful with how it releases iPhones. Every model has a role. Every price gap exists for a reason. You're never supposed to feel like the cheaper option is good enough. There's always something missing. Something that nudges you towards spending more. But the iPhone 17, it looks like it might break that pattern. Not loudly, not aggressively, but quietly, in a way that only becomes obvious once you step back and look at the full picture. The most interesting part is that Apple isn't marketing this phone as a budget iPhone. That word doesn't even fit anymore. The iPhone 17e is shaping up to be a value disruptor. A phone that doesn't scream compromise, yet costs hundreds less than the models Apple really wants to sell you first. And if one specific rumored feature makes it into the final version, the entire iPhone lineup suddenly stops making sense. Let's start with the thing Apple usually protects the most: the processor. For years, Apple followed a predictable formula. New chip for the expensive phones. Last year's chip for the cheaper ones. They would tell you it's still fast. And to be fair, it usually was. But also created a clear performance gap. You paid more, you got newer silicon. Simple. Except the leaks around the iPhone 17e suggest Apple might be breaking that rule. Multiple supply chain reports point toward the iPhone 17e using an A19 series chip. Not an older leftover processor. Not a renamed version of last year's silicon, but a current generation chip from the same family powering the main iPhone 17 lineup. In real-world terms, this changes everything. Because most people don't buy phones based on benchmarks. They buy them based on how they feel. App launches, scrolling, switching between apps, gaming, video editing, camera processing. All of that depends heavily on the processor. And if the iPhone 17e is truly running an A19 series chip, daily performance is going to feel almost identical to phones that cost $200 or $300 more. That's not just good for consumers. That's uncomfortable for Apple. This is where Apple's confidence in its silicon becomes very clear. Apple knows its chips are ahead of the competition. They know that even a slightly scaled version of a current-gen chip can outperform many Android flagships that cost over $1,000. So by placing that kind of power inside a $600 phone, Apple isn't just competing on value. It's flexing. But this also reveals something else. Apple understands human behavior very well. They know their most loyal customers don't wait. They upgrade immediately. They pre-order. They line up on launch day. Those people buy the regular iPhone 17 or the Pro models before the full lineup even exists. By the time the iPhone 17e arrives, the early buyers are already locked in. This is what many people call the loyalty tax. You pay more for being early. You pay more for not waiting. And Apple has been running this play for years. The iPhone 17e appears to be the delayed reward for patient buyers. The people who wait 6 months. The people who don't need the newest thing immediately. Those people often get more value for less money. Performance alone wouldn't be enough if the phone looked outdated. Apple knows that too. Nobody wants to feel like they bought the cheap iPhone. That's why one of the most consistent leaks around the iPhone 17e is the removal of the old notch. Instead, the phone is expected to feature the dynamic island. This matters more than Apple will ever admit. The notch is a visual signal. It tells people which iPhone you're using. When you see the dynamic island, you assume it's a newer, more premium model. And Apple wants that association everywhere. With the EPO, NE17, EE getting the same pill-shaped cutout, most people won't be able to tell whether you're holding the base iPhone 17 or the cheaper 17e. The dynamic island isn't just about looks either. It's functional. Calls, music playback, navigation, timers, live activities. All of these small interactions live there now. Removing it would make the phone feel dated. Including it makes the phone feel current. That's a deliberate decision. Now combine that with another major upgrade. The display. Leaks strongly suggest the iPhone 17e will use an OLED panel instead of an LCD. This is huge. OLED changes how a phone feels immediately. Blacks are truly black. Colors pop without looking artificial. Contrast is higher. Text looks sharper. Videos look richer. Even simple things like dark mode feel better. For years, Apple used LCD screens as a way to separate cheaper iPhones from premium ones. But at this point, OLED has become an expectation, not a luxury. Giving the iPhone 17e an OLED panel pushes it firmly into premium territory, even if the price doesn't reflect that. So let's pause for a second and look at what we already have. A current generation A19 series chip. A modern front design with dynamic island. An OLED display, all at a rumored starting price of around $599. That alone makes the standard iPhone 17 feel awkward. But Apple doesn't stop there. The front camera is getting a surprising amount of attention in the leaks. The iPhone 17e is rumored to feature an upgraded 18-megapixel selfie camera with advanced subject tracking. This is similar to Center Stage on iPads, where the camera intelligently keeps you centered in the frame. This matters because the front camera is now more important than ever. Video calls, social media, short-form video, live streams, selfies. The front camera is what many people use the most. An 18-megapixel sensor means sharper images and clear video. Subject tracking means you can move naturally while recording and still stay in frame. For people who create content casually or professionally, this is a big deal. You can set your phone down, start recording, and talk naturally without worrying about positioning yourself perfectly. For a mid-range iPhone, that kind of feature feels generous. At this point, it's fair to ask where the compromise is, because Apple never gives everything away at once. There's always a line, and the biggest debate in the leaks right now centers on one specific feature. The display refresh rate. Right now, Apple keeps high refresh rate displays locked to Pro models. 120 Hz, smooth scrolling, fluid animations. Once you experience it, it's hard to go back. Standard iPhones have stayed at 60 Hz for years. It works fine, but it doesn't feel cutting edge anymore. The big question is whether the iPhone 17e stays at 60 Hz or jumps to 90 Hz. A 90 Hz display would be a middle ground. Smoother than 60. Not as extreme as 120, but noticeably better. If Apple keeps the iPhone 17e at 60 Hz, it's a clear move to protect the higher price models. And honestly, even then, the phone would still be an excellent value. Most people care more about performance, battery life, camera quality, and display type than refresh rate. But if Apple gives the iPhone 17 a 90 Hz OLED display, everything changes. At that point, the value proposition becomes almost impossible to ignore. You'd be getting near flagship performance, modern design, OLED, upgraded selfie camera, and smoother scrolling for hundreds less than the standard iPhone 17. That's when people start asking uncomfortable questions. Why pay $800 for the regular iPhone 17? What are you really getting for the extra money? For most users, the answer would be very little. Unless you specifically need pro features like advanced telephoto zoom or niche video formats, the rational choice becomes obvious. Buy the iPhone 17, save the cash. And that's exactly why many people believe Apple will play it safe and lock the 17e at 60 Hz. Even then, the phone still exposes something important. How much extra people have been paying for small upgrades? How much value has been artificially segmented? The iPhone 17 doesn't feel like a budget phone. It feels like Apple showing its hand. So what should you do with this information? If you're thinking about upgrading right now, slow down. Don't rush into a store and spend $800 to $1,200 without seeing what Apple does next. We're close enough to the iPhone 17e launch window that waiting could save you a lot of money or force better deals across the lineup. If you already bought an iPhone 17 recently, and this is making you uncomfortable, you're not alone. Apple relies on early adopters. That's how this system works. It doesn't make you stupid. It just means you bought early. The bottom line is simple. The iPhone 17e has the potential to be the most important iPhone of its generation. Not because it's the most powerful or the most expensive, but because it exposes Apple's pricing strategy in a way that's hard to ignore. If it launches with a 60 Hz display, it's still one of the best value iPhones Apple has ever made. If it launches with 90 Hz, it becomes the obvious choice for most people. The moment that final display spec is confirmed, everything becomes clear. Either Apple protects its premium models, or Apple goes all in on dominating the mid-range market, even if it makes its own lineup look awkward. I'll be watching that moment very closely. In my honest opinion, if Apple delivers even most of these leaks, the iPhone 17e will be the smartest iPhone to buy. Not the flashiest, not the most hyped, but the one that makes the most sense. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future leaks and updates.